Ford's electrification strategy is an interesting one. They've decided to start with their icon. Their icons being the Ford Mustang, which they made the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the Ford Transit van, and their Ford F-Series pickup trucks, particularly the F-150. They've just revealed the F-150 Lightning, resurrecting an old nameplate. It looks like it may be all around rather good, but it has a couple of specific features that I think warrant more attention. That next on The Tinker Talks. This video has been sponsored by me! Realizing your phone is low on charge, you reach for your charging cord. It falls upon the floor. Irritated, you search for it. It fell in some kind of crack. Upon its discovery, you are not pleased. You wonder if all of this effort is worth it. But your device's life depends upon you. You must push through. You must reach it, no matter the pain. You have done it. But there has to be a better way. After extensive R&D and literal years of testing across a variety of households, I have developed the Tinker's Cable Cradle. It's compatible with a broad range of cables and even dongles. It's quite easy to insert cables without even looking, just by feel. And also get them out. And it holds most cords very securely, unless you release it. Insert, hold, release. Very simple. I have them up for sale right now on etsy.com/shop/thetinkercells. I'd really appreciate it. In an effort to lead off strong with their electric efforts, they've decided to electrify 3 of their most iconic nameplates. They've committed to investing $22 billion through 2025. Some of that money will be going to products such as this one, the Ford F-150 Lightning. As you can see here, it's rather conventional looking. The name is derived from the SVT Lightning, though the new electric Lightning is quite a bit quicker. All versions of the F-150 Lightning will be 4x4, 2 motors, 1 in the front, 1 in the back. 4 doors, 4-wheel independent suspension. It has a bunch of cool trailer assistance features and a rather unique onboard scale type system where it allows you to measure loads. You can get 230 or 300 miles of range with different battery sizes. Seems like they'll be sharing the infotainment system from the Mustang Mach-E, which I think is a pretty good idea to make better use out of development resources. Seems like the cheapest versions might have something more like this, though. Speaking of pricing, the starting price is supposed to be about $40,000, but it goes up to about $90,000 if you want to pay that much. I'm sure they'd be perfectly happy to allow you to do that. But it looks like the starting price for the extended range battery is about $52,000 or so. However, if you factor in some of the incentives available, like the $7,500 tax incentive that's currently available, and potentially some pretty hefty ones for different states, you can get that thing down into the upper 20s. I don't know if there's been another vehicle with as big of a range as 28,000 to 90,000. Before. They plan on building the vehicle at the historic Rouge facility in Dearborn, Michigan, and they have a joint venture with SK Innovation called Blue Oval SK, and that'll be in Commerce, Georgia. We'll have to see how their battery supply scales over time. I mean, they have plans to scale it, but that will be a large determining factor as to how many vehicles they can manufacture. You have Tesla talking about the scale of terawatt hours. They're not starting quite that large. I think it was about 160 gigawatt hours by 2030, but they could get supply from elsewhere, potentially. One thing I particularly liked was during the reveal, the CEO actually stated specifically, quote, "This is going to have the lowest cost of ownership of any truck we've ever made." I like that. EVs are such a good deal if you intend on keeping them for a long time. And obviously anybody with a fleet mentality is definitely thinking along those lines. One of Ford's biggest advantages, potentially, in the near term, is that tax incentive. Because as it is right now, Tesla's at a disadvantage. The starting price is the same for both of their entry points. With a $7,500 tax incentive, Ford has an advantage. I'm not sure what kind of incentive it is if it punishes the first movers. When you're the company that did what they wanted you to do, now you're at a competitive disadvantage. Kind of weird. It incentivizes kind of bad behavior, but maybe I'll talk about that in another video. Now, the F-150 Lightning might have some downsides compared to its competitors. Compared to the Cybertruck, it has this tougher exoskeleton and a much higher maximum range available at 500 miles. With the Lightning maxing out at 300, it's a little bit iffy because it sounds like longtime competitors like the Chevy Silverado is intending to have a 400-mile range. We don't know about prices on that one yet, but The other more significant downside is perhaps the charging time. Take a look at these numbers. A lot of these might not matter that much because for a lot of users, they won't be, largely depleting the majority of their battery every day, but it's something to think about if you're planning to look into this. And their 15 to 80% charging times are 44 and 41 minutes respectively with a small and large battery. It's not terrible, it's not great. I'm really curious to see how it stacks up against the competition. That kind of charging time, and when you combine that with the fact that when you're towing heavy loads and big aerodynamically inefficient trailers, you're going to have significantly decreased range. How much? Who knows? There's so many variables. For all those horse trailer toting mountain men, maybe not the best choice. But if you're anybody else and in the market for a new pickup truck, I think you'd be a fool not to at least look at this thing. The average transaction price for a full-size pickup truck is around $50,000 already. So with the extended range battery pack, I think starting at about 52, and then being able to subtract like tax incentives and stuff like that off of it, you're right in the market. So on to the stuff that I thought was really cool. Along with that scales thing and the ability for the vehicle to actually take that into account for range estimations and stuff like that, they introduced this, Ford Intelligent Backup Power. This is basically a system that allows you to use the battery pack of your vehicle as a home backup battery for your home. It has a capacity much larger than any residential battery, and if you're just using it for backup, then you're not going to like wear it out fast or something. For some reason, Tesla's been really hesitant to do this, despite a lot of their fans really clamoring for it. This sort of thing can literally save lives in events like what happened in Texas in February of 2021. It does come with some stipulations. You have to have things installed in your house properly. You need to have this really high-powered charging station. You have to have like the extended range battery, I think. With a battery of this sort of size, you can literally run your house for several days. And if they're doing one of those sort of rolling blackout sort of strategies like they did in Texas, you might even be able to charge it up and then keep going for several days more. Does it beat having like a dedicated home battery and like solar and stuff so you can maximize your own independence and security? Well, no, probably not, but I think it's pretty great. And if for some reason you can't use that intelligent home backup thing, you could at least plug in extension cords and run them to your critical loads inside your house. A refrigerator or a freezer or your air conditioner or heaters if it's, one of those cold events. Other trucks will have this kind of power output. I think their hybrid one had something like this, probably not nearly as good though. And the Cybertruck is also going to have this power output, as well as I think a air compressor. We'll see how that goes. You'll also be able to power entire work sites. It has a whole bunch of power outlets in multiple locations of the vehicle. That brings me to the Mega Power Frunk. I think this might just be the best frunk design I've seen so far. Frunk meaning front trunk. Stick them together, frunk. You have AC outlets in there, you've got USB in there, you can put your laptop or your tablet in there and have it charge. You can have a cooler that keeps things cool because it's powered. You can use it as a standing desk, use your laptop there, have it plugged in. And like what Ford's done with their other frunk design in the Mustang Mach-E, it's totally water resistant. So put dirty stuff in there, wash it out. Put ice in there, let it melt. Who cares? It's pretty cool. You can put 400 pounds in there of useful stuff instead of like a generator that you got to lug around to power the worksite. It's pretty cool. But I want to show more clearly why I think this is one of the best frunk designs. Now here's Canoe. They made a funky pickup truck thing. It's basically just a concept at this point, but who knows. And it had an interesting thing where it had like a front gate you would fold down and then you could slide these things to side, shown here, and it would become a work table, and they had outlets and stuff in there. And people went, man, outlets in the front, that could be pretty cool. And here the Ford has it. But the Ford probably has way more space in this thing. Canoe is an interesting vehicle. Here's an example of how you could use this as a desk. You might use a laptop and all that kind of stuff. You can see here that the GMC Hummer EV has a frunk physical design that's very similar, where you have the grille integrated into it and that lifts up out of the way. So you have basically a level floor to slide things in and out of. I think the Ford F-150 one has a slight lip in there to try and prevent things from falling out. We'll see how that pans out. Looks like the Hummer doesn't have that. Ford does. No. So it's got the power, it's got this kind of design, and it's got maybe like a little bit of a security lip. We'll see. Here's another shot of the Hummer EV's frunk, and there doesn't really seem to be any sign of any kind of power or anything like that. This might put the Cybertruck and the Rivian at a little bit of a disadvantage in some ways. Some people might prefer the sort of big tub that they have, but it looks like those might be quite difficult to lift things in and out of. It's this prospect of competition that I find particularly interesting about the Ford F-150 Lightning, because I feel like it may actually be quite a contender for certain audiences. Thankfully, there appears to be competition coming. A number of these vehicles are going to come out in relatively rapid succession. The Lightning and the Cybertruck I've talked about. I've mentioned the Rivian and the Hummer. Motor One was using this little chart. All the links are in the description. You can see they have different drivetrain options, they have different power levels, they have different torque numbers, especially Hummer, which uses a totally different way of measuring it, and different accelerations. The Lightning's one of the slowest ones, but does it really matter? I don't know. It's these range numbers that are pretty significant. 300 max range, 500 max range for the Cybertruck, 350 for the Hummer EV, but that's only in the limited edition. I made a whole video about that one. You should look that one up. Yikes. And then 400 for the Rivian. We don't yet know how the prices actually match up with all of these options for all these vehicles. But first the Rivian will be coming out, then the Cybertruck and Hummer EV, then the Ford F-150 Lightning, maybe. Tesla's been kind of all over the place with their actual production timings, but I'm especially interested in the Ford F-150 and the Tesla Cybertruck. Their pricing to spec kind of overlap in some ways. The Hummer's over here saying you can't afford me, and the Rivian's saying, let's have a premium adventure. Anyway, there's a lot of things that can happen in the near future. Things like changing the tax incentives, perhaps even to be something completely different, like point of sale incentives, the qualifications for them. And all these kind of things could actually quite significantly change the financial balance of all these things. Anyway, I think it's an interesting and potentially compelling vehicle for many of you. And I'd like to see some of the things that you see in this vehicle potentially brought to other product lines as well, from other manufacturers. So anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to. I've been having a heck of a time lately, and I'd really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, I had some rather interesting conjecture and ideas pertaining to the yoke-style steering wheel and the Cybertruck not having any door handles in previous videos, so maybe you'd like to check out those, or checking out my other channel. I've developed a product that I think many of you would find very useful, so maybe check out the links in the description. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.